Hello, everyone. I am Christian Kosovas, and this is the first episode of the Through the Briars podcast. Welcome. I just want to say thank you, firstly, to start if you managed to stumble upon this podcast. So, what I want to get beginning first is explaining what I am going to be doing with this podcast, what I'm going to be using it for, the type of content I will be putting out, and then I'll get into the why. So I speak about the disciplines that shape a meaningful life: self-mastery, self-help, responsibility, love, relationships rightly ordered, and the perennial tension between good and evil. Essential to this is learning how and why to endure suffering and trial with humility and perseverance, eyes lifted towards what is good, true, and worthy, even when clarity is hard-won and progress is forged in silence. And my work's going to be drawing from lots of literature, some philosophy, and a big portion of it will be from art and myth. Because I believe that these are safeguard truths that have endured across centuries. While logic is important and refines the intellect, the stories we've had since the primordial times form this moral imagination. Great authors, timeless characters, and enduring archetypes. These don't merely just explain reality, they disclose it, communicating truth with a profundity that reason alone cannot achieve, and through consequence, sacrifice, and lived meaning. And here I'll be engaging these archetypes, not as abstractions, but as meta-truths, as orienting guides for confronting life with sobriety and resolve, extracting each of their truths, pulling what is good and discarding the bad. And these remind us that mastery of the self precedes freedom, and that dignity is cultivated through restraint, and that meaning emerges through responsibility and honor rather than evasion. And my podcast and my page, if some of you already will be following me on TikTok and Instagram, it's going to be an attempt to restore depth where it has been attenuated, to recover ideas that have been neglected or displaced, and to treat beauty not as ornamentation, but as a catalyzing force that unites the fabric of being. What has endured continues to endure because it speaks to the permanent architecture of the human soul. So nonetheless, that is how I will be approaching my podcasts and the way I give out to you guys. The reason I chose to do it in this way and this sort of format is because I believe there's so many self-help places and podcasts and people out there, and all of these kind of people have a very similar approach, where they know how to help and how to give you the answer, but they don't necessarily tell you why. And I think most of the problems everybody has in life is because they do not have the why for why they are doing things. Everyone can be given the proper answers. You can have all the information laid out before you, but if you don't have the why and you don't understand for yourself and for what's greater, how can you possibly orient yourself even with the right answers? So, with that, that's why I'm leaning into the literature and artistic side of all of this. And that's not to undermine or deny the validity of everybody else's self-help tactics, and I will be drawing from those too. But I believe a key and extremely vital part of the healing and the convalescence is that ability to learn from the stories, from the art, from the literary quality that we have all throughout history. And I'll be talking about all those kind of characters that we know and love, all those stories that are very iconic for a reason, from Hamlet to Alyosha and Ivan to everyone. I'm going to try cover as many as I can and connect it to the ways with people live now, and whether that be a good or a bad way. Because it is so important that we have that direction and we know why we're going in that direction. For me, for so long, I had the answers, but I never knew why I was doing it and why I was going in that way. And despite having the answers and rationalizing every possible outcome, I still felt extremely lost. And that's what I want to help clear up for you guys in the best way that I can and give back. So I'm going to get into really quickly, probably won't be quick, but enjoy the show. My 3 foundations and the 6 pillars that I will be extracting from through all my videos, and that are kind of what represents the Briars of Truth. So just to start, the Briars of Truth, the reason I chose that name for my brand on my page, and this is called the Through the Briars pod. If you can look at the image of the podcast, it could be pretty self-explanatory, and it is probably due to change a little bit over time. However, the reason I chose that is because I believe truly that we find the meaning, the responsibility, the honor, the restraint, the love, the beauty in life through suffering and through tragedy. And I believe it can be no other way. And to live it in any other way ends up with someone who's just momentarily pleased with his choices, but it doesn't sustain, and it leaves the soul hollow and wanting for more. And I think we all know the truth that you face tragedy in your life. Suffering is inevitable. Sometimes it is just, and sometimes it is unjust. And the only way through that, the only way to build your character, the only way to have a meaningful life and adventure is to have the ups and downs. And again, I'm going to just draw quickly from all of the art and the movie and the TV show and the books that we have from history. Even now, the story is always the hero going on the adventure, trying to find his way, getting lost, being in a very vulnerable, bad, and dark place, overcoming that, fighting dragons and fighting problems and finding treasure. And all of these stories point at something bigger than it just being the dragons and the hero and the adventure. It's because all of that leads you to the correct orientation. You can walk in the right direction, but if you're not oriented towards the right direction, it can be for nothing. So the reason I've done that is because I think the logo is pretty self-explanatory, and I believe all of us understand that and can relate. I mean, we've gone through so many horrific things throughout our lives, everyone, some worse than others, but no pain is undermined just because it can be comparable to somebody else who's gone through more. And we've gone through those treacherous times. We've come out better people on the other end, more intelligent, more complete, more understanding, more in touch with ourselves. Some don't, of course, and that comes unfortunately due to a lack of understanding and integration. But that's what I'm here to do, is to try and help you. So if you feel like you are perpetually in a rut that you cannot get out of, I want to be able to provide some different perspectives and opinions that you're free to use or free to disregard. So my 3 foundations that I want to get into quickly, that are the base that hold everything up of my ideas and what I want to talk about in all my future content, is number 1, responsibility from meaning and humility. And what does that mean? That means that you choose what is heavy, you carry it. You carry your suffering, your burdens, your sins, your temptations, and you carry all of that without resentment, because that is the biggest killer of everything in life. I mean, resentment, bitterness, pride, all of those things, they shatter our will and they fracture it. And when you're fractured, you're fragmented. And when you're fragmented, your objects of worship are fragmented, and you don't know where to go and you don't know how to act, because you're being pulled in many directions at once. And that is what causes the increasing anxiety and depression that we have, especially in our generation. I'm going to talk in that about voluntary responsibility, not just about having a load forced onto you, but voluntarily picking up what is yours to carry and carrying it. Enduring hardship with humility. When hardship comes along, you're not going to sit there and moan and complain and whine about it. You're going to try your best to see that this is what's meant to happen and it can be no other way. And in that, you will be thankful in a sense, because you know that nothing in this world is misplaced and everything is perfectly ordered how it's meant to be. And when you go against that order and try to counter order with chaos, that is when your life starts getting worse. Because in life, there is no worse way to make any situation more horrific than it already is, by being bitter and resentful and complaining, because you open another section underneath that, a whole new place underneath that, a different kind of fire that burns not just your body, but it also burns your soul. And I also want to touch on just in responsibility. It's a moral nobility. I believe responsibility is a moral obligation. And nowadays it's used as some kind of production hack. And while it has that meaning loosely embedded inside, I don't believe that that's the only meaning, because responsibility, like I just said, it is a noble act. And when it is only used for the sake of production, it becomes quite redundant, in my opinion. My second foundation that I have that I wish to talk about, and this will be the bulk of everything, is the stories, the myth, the tragedy, archetypes, symbols, art, literature, some philosophy, as all oracles of truth. Again, pulling what is good and removing what is bad. Not every piece of art and literature that is out there is true, but a lot of it points you to the right direction. And what I want to establish really clearly is, in this pursuit of truth, art is going to help point you to the right way. It is not the end definitive, this is right and nothing else matters. It is a huge portion on the truth, but this should direct you. It shouldn't be the ultimate God that you worship, if you want to put it like that. Now, in that, I'm going to teach you why these ancient stories show and reveal truth more profoundly than modern arguments, and why, when you have logic and rationale compared and accompanied by the art and the truth of that, you figure out the way of life. You figure out why life happens and why certain things happen. It's not just about knowing history. It's about why that history happens perennially throughout society, eternally. I'm going to touch, of course, on all the kinds of archetypes there are. Heroes versus tyrants, and people like Ivan versus Alyosha, because these stories, these characters, they are not just fictional, invisible people that don't exist, because their patterns of being exist in every single person, which is why they were made. The artists of these stories, they see other people, how they act. They see the warlords and the government officials of our history and past and whoever, and they understand that the archetype of how they were orienting and living their life will lead to this outcome, and that is a fact. That is a undeniable axiomatic truth about life. And these archetypes and stories, they're perennial wisdom. They are wisdom that is true in the past, in the present, and in the future. And that is a special kind of truth, because it is a truth that is and transcends time and is not locked only into the present. And my third foundation that I'm going to talk about as one of the bigger things is, while you are on this journey, is to live it with a childlike love, kindness, and moral strength that outlasts decay. Now, when I say childlike love, that is a very misconstrued idea that a lot of people have, and they compare it to childish. Childish and childlike are vastly different. A childish love is one that is self-gaining, self-benefiting. It disregards the feelings of others. It is self-serving. It is hedonistic. And I think we can all understand that when you see an adult or somebody literally over the age of like 12, maybe even 16. Let's say 16, maybe not 12. 12 is a bit young. 16 who are using ways, who know better, and they manipulate into their own game. And everyone's capable of that Machiavellian type of manipulation, and we're all victims of it, myself included. And we see just how bad it is when you have somebody, for example, who is 20 or 30 or 40 and has refused to grow up, and they are being childish, and they use other people for their own childish, immediate whim, granted reasons. Childlike love is different, and you'll see this in a lot of characters I will get into in the future, in future content, but we've lost our ability for childlike love, and we can attain it back, but it is very difficult. And childlike love is that innocence and that love that doesn't hold grudges, You see how children love. Children love despite what you do. If you yell at them for when they've done something wrong, you can see the child. They come back, they're running, they're happy. It's almost kind of like, and I'm not comparing children to dogs, for example. I'm just using this as a further analogy to bolster my claim. But dogs, when you yell at them, they still come to you and they still love, and they're the exact same. They don't change. And it's that kind of love, because being childlike is not losing your wonder. And the more older we get, and the more our modern society is developing, we are losing our ability for wonder and imagination and creativity. And children, they are happy to just be. We like to try be the ultimate master and God of our own life. And children, the difference with them is we, who are childish, we try to stand and try to be equal to God for the sake of example. And a childlike person or a child will stand in awe and in reverence for God and will have no issue with something or someone else being above them. And I use that as an example because in further content, I'm going to talk especially about Prince Mishkin from The Idiot, Fyodor Dostoevsky, and Alyosha Karamazov from The Brothers Karamazov, who is the GOAT, by the way, and one of the best characters ever written. It's incredible. They are the pinnacle of childlike love as adults. And even in that, the kindness and the moral strength to outlast decay, we are surrounded by negativity and evil, and we see bad things on TikTok all the time and on our phones, on social media, on the news. And we often forget how good the world truly is because we're so encompassed by the bad and all the terror that lingers around us. There is so much beauty out there in the world. There's beauty in these stories. There's beauty in nature. There's beauty in your friends and your family. And again, like, we just forget that because of the way that we live and the things that we consume. And it alters us and it depletes all of our moral strength. And when bad situations come, we're negative, we complain, we say, well, why should I continue to be good? And it's because everyone is stuck in the same black and white lens of bad things happen, why should I be good? And people very, very easily give up that kindness. And it's not easy. It's not easy at all. Being kind and loving, despite how many times you've been burned, is really, really hard. And it takes more strength to continue being kind and to continue loving with humility than it does to give up, because giving up is the coward's way out. And it is hard. And no doubt all of us have gone through times where we want to give up and stop being kind to people because we keep getting screwed over. But like I said before, you're digging yourself a further hole. And the longer you stay in it, you will look up from that hole and you will only see part of the sky and you won't be able to see anything. You'll be very tunnel visioned in your own anguish. I want to teach in that as well that truth cannot be understood and accessed without humility. Truth and humility are two things that are intertwined, and you cannot have one without the other. The path to knowledge and wisdom is humility. It's as simple as that. And it sounds easy in practice, but actually living through a process of humility is very, very difficult when you understand it quite intimately. It's not something that can be very surface leveled and pulled from with what you want. It's intrinsic in its own way with depth. And I feel that if you are unaware of that depth, you can very quickly transition from humility to pride, which most of us do. I also want to touch on things like masculinity without tyranny, because masculinity now is, of course, altered and it's weird and it's strange. And we see all these kind of supposed masculine role models out there that are misdirecting a lot of young men who are lonely and have no orienting guide. And that's what I want to try to provide, is that guide, not as a final answer, but as an answer that may be maybe half of the way to truth, or even a quarter of the way to truth, instead of teaching men to live for vanity and living for status and fleeting things that have no meaning and don't sustain tragedy. And I'm also going to talk about things like discipline against nihilism, because nihilism is a state of perpetual paralysis, and that comes from too much logical thinking and rationality. analyzing everything and being afraid to act, not being in touch with some sort of moral conscience and compass that directs, guides, and orients in the right way. So those are the three big foundations that are going to be most of my content. So just to restart that, the responsibility from meaning and humility, stories, myths, archetypes, art, literature, etc., as oracles of truth, and childlike love, kindness, and moral strength to outlast decay. Now, from there, I have 6 pillars that are going to be extensions and branches off of these big ideas. And those 6 pillars will also branch out even more ideas. So this is all one giant umbrella. So these are not strictly the only things. There is a lot of depth in all of these that I will be branching out to throughout my videos and when I'm making my claims and when I'm revealing the truth of story to you. My first pillar, sort of tied into the first foundational principle, but responsibility and facing fears that are voluntarily chosen. Avoiding responsibility is moral laziness masqueraded as self-care. I really want you to think about that. Avoiding responsibility is moral laziness masqueraded as self-care. A lot of self-help nowadays is very egocentric. It makes people hyper-independent and narcissistic, and they think that's a good thing, and it's not. I promise you it is not. And if you are very easily fooled and falling for things like that, you have a very, very weak, and I say this with love, you have a very weak moral posture. I had that too for a long time, and I still do with certain things. But if you have no guide for orientation, you're going to fall for anything. You don't have strong beliefs. You just feed what other people say to you, have no ability to think for yourself and to think broadly, then you will become a victim of that hyper-independence, that narcissism, that tyrannical way of being. And my second pillar is a very important one, and it's going to be a good one that ties in with the masculinity and just people in general. Strength that serves and does not dominate. Power is honorable when it protects, and weakness creates predators. And I'm not going to get into the hows and whys of that in this because this is just a brief overview today. But I do really, really want people to understand that one, because we are living in a time where weakness is being celebrated. That is a horrible way to teach people to be good, to do right. Power is very dangerous, and sometimes there is too much power for one certain person to hold. And when they hold the power of everything with no moral discernment, with no conviction, they fall under the weight of that same power, and it consumes them, and they become tyrannical monsters. Strength should be about service. Real strength is about enduring. It is about serving others. It is about prioritizing the well-being of others. And that's not to say you completely disregard yourself, but this is something that I believe Byung-Chul Han, I believe that's his name, he said in one of his books. I believe it's called The Burnout Society. It's a really good book that you should get your hands on. Really explains the crappy, goal-focused world that we live in now. He says that humility is not thinking less of yourself, but it is thinking about yourself less. I really want you to sit with that and have a think about that, because that's something I'll get into. My third pillar is going to be mimicked virtue creates evil and the dark tetrad type. And this comes to moral hypocrisy at the end of the day. But the dark tetrad type, just really quickly for those who don't know, is Machiavellianism, sadism, psychopathy, and narcissism. And all of those encompass pretty much everything bad you don't want in another person, because they garner most of the world's evil in their hearts. And we all have some evil in our heart to a degree, because no one is perfect and we are all flawed beings. But those people have completely oriented themselves in the wrong way. And we see that a lot nowadays. People everywhere of all kinds of beliefs, ideologies, etc. They They use their morality as a sign of strength, and they claim virtue on themselves. Virtue can't be claimed. You have no right to authorship of virtue. Virtue is bestowed upon you. So I want you to remember that. My next pillar is truth above all. Do not lie. We all lie, and we need to stop lying. Lying shatters everything that is good. If you are always aligning yourself with what's true, and you are saying what is true, yes, you're going to have a lot of people that don't like you. You are going to have a lot of people who do not agree with you. But when you are serving what's right and what's true, things can only unfold for you in the best possible way, even if it doesn't seem so in the moment. The thing with truth is, and I want you to remember this, truth is a medium to long-term game, and lying and hedonism and that self-focused, hyper-independent narcissism, that is a short-term win. It is good temporarily in the moment, and when life unfolds, it comes back, and it is tragically dangerous. When you are speaking with truth and with conviction, it may not unfold for you in the moment, and something bad may happen in the moment. Maybe 1, 2, 3 weeks, 2 months, 3 months are terrible. But what if, as a consequence of saying the truth in the moment when it was needed to be said, unfolds your future in a miraculous way? That is very plausible. And that is the case pretty much most of the time. You can have 3 months of crap by telling the truth, and then the next 2 years may be phenomenal. You never know. What are you going to do? You're going to lie? You're going to deceive people? Is that really the best way to go? And of course, you need to say the truth with some discernment too, because there is times and place. But most of the world's evil is here because good people don't speak when they need to. And you are equally at fault if you have something important and true to say and you don't say it. You are part of the reason why the world burns. And we're all guilty of this, and me especially. And this is really hard for agreeable people and people pleasers to do because they want to be liked. But being liked does not get you to what's true. In fact, it's actually quite the opposite. And that's not to say you have to be a dick to get to the truth, but you can see what I'm alluding to with some very minimal detail. My next one is going to be the complete eradication of pride, vanity, and hedonism, which is extremely important because pride is the root of all evil. Self-serving, vanity, and hedonism are dominating the current society we live in. And you see by the way people act and the things they worship. They worship things death will all sweep away. We worship status and positions and titles. And yet at the end of the day, no matter what rank you are, whether you're poor or rich, whether you have money or you don't have money, whether you've got 10 Lamborghinis or one crap car, death will take all. And no matter what position in society you are in, death equalizes all. And I don't say that as some kind of nihilistic sadness of, oh, why should I try then if death's going to take everything? There's nothing wrong with having goals, but when people make hedonism, money, status, and all this crap the pinnacle of life and the thing they worship the most, their God, that is when society crumbles, because it makes people self-serving and it makes people oriented towards the wrong things. Those things are great, but they cannot sustain tragedy. They cannot tell you why, and they will never be able to fill the deep void in your heart. And you may think you don't have one. And if you're at a point where you think there is no void in your heart, living in that specific kind of way, you are in a very volatile place. And my last one that I want to talk about, my last pillar, is going to be order and hope help endure suffering without corruption. It's a big one. I mean, there's corruption everywhere. Mostly, if not all, from all of our own involvement. We're all responsible for the sins of the world and the sins of others and the darkness that is amounted. And order, specifically, is a great agent that keeps everything in line and everything in check, obviously. Order needs to be in a place where it is sustaining, but it can also be tempted to wrestle with chaos, because if you're in a place of order for too long, you get bored and you look for chaos. And sometimes too much safety is bad. Sometimes too much safety is bad. A lot of parents also kind of do that with their children, is when there is too much safety, the child cannot learn in the best way. And then when a bad situation happens to them, if they've been sheltered or disregarded for too long and kept safe, they don't know what to do when that chaos comes in, because chaos is always wrestling with order, and too much of one is horrible. But you need a perfect balance for order to take place where things are stable and good and peaceful and joyful, and you need enough chaos to alter and catalyze good kind of change. Because that is also how you are going to endure suffering. You cannot get better if there is no chaos. Likewise, you will be consumed if all you know is chaos. And hope is an interesting one and a hard one. For a lot of people, they can't understand it and they don't get it, and they think hope's a bunch of crap. But hope is believing and knowing that the world inherently is good, and that aligning yourself with truth and with a moral character and with nobility and restraint and honor will outlast the suffering and will orient you in the right direction. And you need to attack life in that way, because it's very easy to give up, like I was saying before. But despite the situation, if you keep orienting your way of being, knowing and thinking that life is good, and if I do good, good eventually will come back to me and it will look after me. That is the safest possible way you can tackle life. And that proposition right there is in so many stories. It is unreal. Just to name one really quickly, Job from the Old Testament of the Bible. One of the most notorious depictions of that exact claim. And innumerable amounts now in movies and TV shows. That's not the only one, but I'm just going to use that one for the sake of example. Job was tested with unjust suffering. He lost everything. He lost everyone. And he said, people were saying to him, why do you still have hope, essentially? Why don't you just give up? Look what's happened to you. You've lost everyone. You've lost everything. He says, I will continue to do good despite what happens to me. I will continue to orient myself and to believe that the world is good and acts for those who do good. I want you to remember that. Do good. Don't think of being good and being perceived as good. Do good. And all else will unfold in the manner in which it's supposed to. Anyway, so those are my 3 foundations and my 6 pillars. And that's what I can't wait to get into. All that stuff, it's so juicy and so filled with incredible wisdom everyone's missing out on. And no one likes to read. Nowadays, everyone's either listening to audiobooks or listening to podcasts and music. And part of the reason I want to do this is because, again, not everyone enjoys reading, and that's fair enough. I think reading is extremely beneficial and everyone should be reading. But if you're someone that's really anti-reading, fair enough. Perhaps you just haven't found a good book, and I'd love to give you guys some recommendations along the way. But part of this is so you can listen and still learn and gain at least the main truth of what a story is telling you. Because again, this is everywhere. It's in all the books. It's, in the right books, of course, not in the wrong kind of books, but a lot of classical literature is truth. Not all, but most. So in saying all of this, I also am trying to get working a webcam so I can film the podcast videos as well and put them on YouTube with a webcam. I'm having some difficulties right now. I'm not super tech savvy. It's really pissing me off, but I'm going to get through it. I have some other stuff I need to buy and finalize some kind of temporary setup. So I just wanted to get this out. You can call it an episode 1 or just as an introduction to the podcast, which is fine. And the goal of the podcast as well is to just live well and to help others. The reason I want to do this is because even if I can help one person out of all this work, to me, I will feel fulfilled, and I will know that I had a positive change on one other person. All it takes is to change yourself to change the world. And if you can change one other person, they can change one person, and you cause a ripple effect of change and beauty. Also, just again, like I said at the very start, living well, orienting yourself well and right, doing what is right. All of these things, we don't know how to do them anymore. We know the hows for everything. We're very rational. We know how. We don't know why. And the why is the more important question. So in saying all this, I'm going to try have an episode out every Monday or Tuesday. I really hope I can get this setup finalized by next week. If I can't, it'll just be another audio recording for the time being. But that's going to be sort of the plan, Monday or Tuesday. I can't wait. I have so many ideas. There's so many characters from my favorite TV shows as well that I adore and have such rich meaning that I want to do YouTube style sort of videos. I don't know. We'll see. It's all just kind of planning for the moment, but I will have normal videos. I will have solo podcast episodes, and hopefully in the future, if it all takes off and it goes well, get some guests on the podcast, have some good chats with other people, get their opinions, see what they think, get some other great minds. You guys have access to so many great minds out there, and more than any other generation, we are blessed. So you got to take advantage of that. And from there, we'll just see how it all amounts and what good can come, hopefully. So yeah, I'm going to wrap it up now. I think I've gone through pretty much all the necessities that I need to. So thank you for tuning into the first episode of the introduction episode of the Briars of Truth podcast, the Through the Briars podcast. Yeah, if you don't follow me already, TikTok, Instagram, the Briars of Truth. My TikTok actually is Christian_Kossa, Kossa. Yeah, give it a follow if you haven't already. But I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much if you got to the end of this. 36 minutes. Wasn't expecting it to go this long, to be honest, but these topics are very extensive and they're extremely difficult to exhaust. So I'm sure a lot of my content will be quite long. But thank you for getting to the end if you did. I really appreciate it. Love you guys who are listening. And I will see you all in the next episode. Have a blessed one. Love.